Well, it's great to be up here in conversation. I know one thing I've certainly enjoyed about this conference so far this year is the diverse amount of folks in the room. We've got folks from investing, we have folks from foundations, and we have so many community folks. And I think when I think about the SAFSF's new strategic direction and us trying to be on the growth edge, we really want to open up this room and have more diverse capital partners in the room and to be in community. We also want, as funders, to be more transparent about our practices and how we can actually learn from community. And I think I'm hoping from our conversation today that we can talk about our relationship to community, what our organizations have done to be able to listen to community, and maybe how we can help other funders who are part of SAFSF to learn more from community and this type of grant making. So first, I'm going to start by asking us all to introduce ourselves and talk about our connection to community. I guess I will start because I haven't introduced myself yet. So I am Haven Leeming, and I work at Builders Initiative, and we're a foundation that works for a more humane planet. And our relationship with community has been complicated. We have some deep community roots in food and in Chicago food systems, but we also have had some programs that have been put up with deep community roots that have been stopped by our board. And so that has been a complicated thing for us as a foundation to look at, and then also to try and repair some of that to community.
Thanks, Haven. My name is Kavita Kopa. I'm a co-executive director at RAFI. We are a farm advocacy nonprofit based in North Carolina, working in the Southeast in the U.S. Caribbean. Our relationship with community is in an interesting kind of space because we are a regranter. So not only are we shifting funds to primarily farmers, but not exclusively in the region that we focus on, we also work in deep connection with farmers in crisis, providing technical assistance. And we really thrive, and it's a big part of our theory of change, of making sure that those two things are happening at the same time and in concert with one another. Happy to be here.
I'm Esperanza Payana. I'm Executive Director with Wild Seeds Fund, and I am also on the board of SAFSF. And Wild Seeds Fund, I'm going to speak as from our perspective as Wild Seeds Fund with our relationship to community. We are a movement-led participatory grant maker. We ceded decision-making power of about 90% of our grant-making capital to our grantee partners who are movement leaders and communication strategists that participate through a grants advisory. And we really see ourselves, we are a funder, but we see ourselves as a movement partner. And resource is something that we are able to partner around to ensure it's being provided, I think, in the best, most supportive way within community. So that's our relationship.
That's wonderful. And I want to kind of touch and ask you a little bit more about that and hear about that journey going from the beginning to where now you see yourself as a true movement leader. What was that like? What did you learn from that? And what challenges did you as an organization have in doing this unlearning and community connection?
Yeah, so we are about 13 years old, and I've really enjoyed looking at the history of our work at the fund, because you can really see the outcome of critical decision points in this 13-year journey. So it started as a funder collaborative and very much funder driven, with the best intentions around providing communications funding in support of movement groups. But it stayed really pretty insular to the networks of the funders, which is a very common thing to happen. And so the group, in seeing that, they recognized that, and they brought in, a consultant to start looking at, what are better ways of structuring the program offerings, what are better ways to start building relationships. And so it started with, let's say, a less extractive model of participatory grant making, where a community advisory board was created, or community advisory council was created to provide recommendations, but the power was still really being held with the funder group. And so it was an evolution of coming in and seeing that there's another way, a stronger way to be in relationship that really demonstrates the trust needed, and that it's so critical to have that trust and demonstrate that trust for true partnership. So I think, we had that evolution. We saw the outcome of it. We saw we were growing in the right direction. And when I came on about 3 years ago as their inaugural executive director. They were at their 10th year. So again, really interesting decision points and growth for this fund. We moved it to ceding power over our primary grant program, which again reflects about 90% of our grant making capital. And you just continue to see the difference in, where the impact, who we are able to reach, and the networks that are happening amongst our grantee partners because of that. So it's a journey. You have to start somewhere.
It's true, you do have to start somewhere. And I think I hear a lot from some traditional foundations where the starting even feels hard. And so they don't even start. But you do have to start somewhere. And then it's just taking the patience and the time to do that learning and deep community conversation. I'd love to hear the same kind of question of what this journey has been for you all.
Absolutely. I think we're coming from a different perspective, and which is part of what I love about coming to SIFSS, because there are so many different perspectives, as you alluded to initially. So for Rafi in particular, because our organization's been around for 35 years, we're 35 this year. I just realized
Happy
that,
birthday.
saying it aloud. Thank you. As a funder, our funding work began, goodness gracious, could I even say, pretty early on in our work. At the time, it was actually focused on farmers who were dependent on tobacco, who were just coming out of the tobacco settlement, for folks who are familiar with the history there. Won't go into it right now. And it's definitely evolved over time in terms of where we've been seeing a lot of the needs of farmers over time. So we're really, I think we're in kind of this space where we have this really strong grounding in community because we've been there. We've been there for such a long time working with folks who are dealing with problems that are really hard to trust a stranger with to figure it out. It's really, really hard to be a farmer in the best of times. And we're often dealing with farmers who are not in the best of times. And where I'm really seeing our role as a funder coming out of that is making sure that we're not only elevating what those needs are to the funder level, being able to move capital accordingly, but also making sure that we're recognizing that this is part of a larger movement, and we are one institution within that larger movement, making sure that those voices are being brought up to the larger level.
Yeah. As I said, Builders Initiative has a complicated relationship with community. But one thing that on the food side we've been able to do is build a fund in Chicago called the Chicago Region Food System Fund. I just got out of a learning dinner in which we talked about how the fund, which is community controlled at this point, has shifted its reporting to try and take more care of the community and have the community actually be able to tell us those stories and have them still be owned by the community. And so I think, hearing your journeys going from learning to actually having the community care is something that the Chicago Region Food System Fund is trying to do. And within reporting, we're trying to be able to kind of bring that picture up. And so I'd love to talk about true partnership and what you all feel as the true partnership of your work with the community within your funding. Would you like to tell us about some partnership?
Absolutely. So given the nature of Rafi's work overall, I think a lot of the way that we view partnership is very much, the currency that we worked with first and foremost was getting people information that they needed, which I think sometimes can be overlooked as a resource, but is an extremely valuable one, especially these days. In terms of the way that we manage partnership in our more monetary grant-making programs, from the very beginning, we've always had a strong farmer presence in the decision-making process. I think over time, that has definitely evolved to somewhat similar to what Esperanza was referring to earlier. The farmers are not only part of the grant decision-making process, they're the ones who are telling us, these are the needs that we're seeing on the ground. This might be a new thing to you, but this is something that we're seeing a lot more, and you need to figure out how to move funds in this direction. So they help us stay really grounded in what the reality is. And they also let us stay aware of what resources might be needed to get farmers to the level where they might be able to take better advantage of the capital that we're able to offer. So that back and forth is crucial. We make sure that we're not only incorporating that structure into the work that we're doing, but we're compensating for time. We're giving folks credit. We're doing those less tangible things, perhaps, that are also really crucial, just in terms of showing respect for the wisdom that they're bringing to us.
So I think for us, it's about sharing power and evaluating every aspect of the work that we're doing and how we can share power with the communities that we're there to serve. So the way that I look at our role as a funder, and really how I see the responsibility of philanthropy in its true form, should be of service to the communities, which means you have to listen to them. In fact, they lead because they're holding the solutions. So that is how we look at that. And we're only going to be doing a good job as funders if we are sharing that power. We know that we hold certain position of access to resource and critically access to networks and relationships that are folks who are, and we also have a limited pool of capital, and we're working on growing it. But it is what it is today. And so we know, and so we try to leverage every aspect of what we have, every resource available to Wild Seeds Fund as a resource being leveraged to strengthen the communities that we're serving. And they know that because they're in partnership. They're seeing it with, we're not just conveying that through words. We're literally, bringing folks in. They're making decisions. It's not only around allocations, it's around every aspect of the grant program. So our grants advisors, we also have a network of grantee partners. So we have grants advisors. We ceded decision-making power to them. And our grantee network is a growing body of grantee partners, whether they are current or previous, who want to stay connected. And we definitely ask them about the next cycle. We check in with them around what the needs are, what are the priorities. So we're always just staying in really close communication. I think this was a very interesting comment that got made at one of the learning dinners that I was attending around looking at the roles and titles within, frequently within philanthropy. And a very common one is a program officer in the officer role. The phrase or the term entitled officer has a very, control and monitoring type indication or meaning to it. So, we have our program person who's amazing, Shawana Evans. I'll name her. She's amazing. Yeah, I know. The director of programs and movement support is her title. And actually, that was the title when I came in as executive director. Siobhan was already there. And so that was her title when I came in. And I was just like, this is brilliant! Because that's what we do. We develop programs, we run the programs, but really what we're there is to be movement building and supporting movement and movement leaders. And so that's what we do.
Yeah, I was thinking about when we first started talking about this panel, and one of the questions was, what's the barrier in philanthropy for, community control? And philanthropy itself, the IRS itself is the barrier, and we have to work within that system. And I love your framing of even titles, just shifting a title can actually help with that. But I also want to say we're hopeful today that we're trying to be transparent about what our organizations have done, because we're hoping that SAFSF with the new strategic direction with diverse capital partners are going to help bring in more community members. So give us that chance, as you both said, to listen to community members and help make that shift of power back into the movement leaders and the community leaders. So thank you so much for both of you for sharing your stories. And I hope that we can come back at future SAFS forums to be able to have this again, and we can talk about how SAFS has changed to be more community driven.
Thank you,
Thank
David.
you.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you next year in Savannah, Georgia for the 2026 Forum.